Everyone has heard people quarrelling. Sometimes it sounds funny, and sometimes it sounds merely unpleasant. But however it sounds, I believe we can learn something very important from listening to the kinds of things they say. They say things like this: "How'd you like it if anyone did the same to you?" "That's my seat. I was there first." "Leave him alone. He isn't doing you any harm." "Why should you shove in first?" "Give me a bit of your orange. I gave you a bit of mine." "Come on. You promised." People say things like that every day. Educated people as well as uneducated. And children as well as grown-ups. Now, what interests me about all these remarks is that the man who makes them is not merely saying that the other man's behaviour doesn't happen to please him. He's appealing to some kind of standard of behaviour which he expects the other man to know about. And the other man very seldom replies, "To hell with your standard." Nearly always he tries to make out that what he's been doing doesn't really go against the standard, or that if it does, there is some special excuse. He pretends there is some special reason in this particular case why the person who took the seat first shouldn't keep it, or that things were quite different when he was given the bit of orange, or that something has turned up which lets him off keeping his promise. It looks, in fact, very much as if both parties had in mind some kind of law or rule of fair play or decent behaviour or morality, or whatever you like to call it, about which they really agreed. And they have. If they hadn't, they might of course fight like animals, but they couldn't quarrel in the human sense of the word. Quarrelling means trying to show that the other man is in the wrong, and there would be no sense in trying to do that unless you and he had some sort of agreement as to what right and wrong are, just as there'd be no sense in saying that a footballer had committed a foul unless there is some agreement about the rules of football. Now, this law or rule about right and wrong used to be called the law of nature. Nowadays, when we talk of the laws of nature, we usually mean things like gravitation, or heredity, or the laws of chemistry. But when the older thinkers called the law of right and wrong the law of nature, they really meant the law of human nature. The idea was that just as falling stones are governed by the law of gravitation and chemicals by chemical laws, so the creature called man also had his law, with this great difference, that the stone couldn't choose whether it obeyed the law of gravitation or not, but a man could choose either to obey the law of human nature or to disobey it. They called it law of nature because they thought that everyone knew it by nature and didn't need to be taught it. They didn't mean, of course, that you mightn't find an odd individual here and there who didn't know it, just as you find a few people who are colour-blind or have no ear for a tune. But taking the race as a whole, they thought that the human idea of decent behaviour was obvious to everyone. And I believe they were right. If they were not, then all the things we say about the war are nonsense. What is the sense in saying the enemy is in the wrong, unless right is a real thing, which the Germans at bottom know as well as we do, and ought to practice? If they have no notion of what we mean by right, then though we might still have to fight them, we could no more blame them for that than for the colour of their hair. I know that some people say the idea of a law of nature or decent behaviour known to all men is unsound because different civilizations and different ages have had quite different moralities. But this is not true. They have only had slightly different moralities. Just think what a quite different morality would mean. Think of a country where people were admired for running away in battle, or where a man felt proud of double-crossing all the people who had been kindest to him. You might just as well try to imagine a country where 2 and 2 made 5. Men have differed as regards what people you ought to be unselfish to, whether it was only your own family or your fellow countrymen, or everyone. But they have always agreed that you ought not to put yourself first. Selfishness has never been admired. Men have differed as to whether you should have 1 wife or 4, but they have always agreed that you must not simply have any woman you liked. But the most remarkable thing is this. Whenever you find a man who says he does not believe in a real right and wrong, you will find the same man going back on this a moment later. He may break his promise to you, but if you try breaking one to him, he will be complaining it's not fair before you can say Jack Robinson.